Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're so thrilled to have so many folks here with us tonight for this very special event. For those of you I've not yet met, I'm Merritt McAllister, and I have the privilege of serving as the interim dean of the Levin College of Law. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here to campus tonight to honor one of UF Law's true icons, Professor Dennis Calfee. One of my favorite parts of this job is going out on the road to see our alumni, so many of whom came to us tonight, but many times we go to visit them. And on the road, meeting all of you, it didn't take me very long in this role to realize just how impactful Professor Calfee has been. Everywhere I go, from New York City to the West Coast to South Florida, Professor Calfee has impacted nearly everyone I meet. It's hard to think of anyone else at UF Law or frankly at any other law school who has shaped so many generations of law alumni. Knowing it would be a very tall order to capture this legacy in one evening, we've asked two of UF Law's best to help us. And it's my honor to welcome them to the stage, but before I do, a couple words of encouragement. My sense is that there's a lot of enthusiasm for Professor Calfee here tonight, and this may take a little while to properly celebrate and honor him. And I just want to remind you that there's a bar back there. If you need to sneak out, it's totally fine, okay? No one's gonna judge here, no judgment. And then there's food a little further down the road, okay? So feel free to get nourishments if you start feeling faint or just wanna stretch your legs a little. Totally fine. We wanna give space and time to honor Professor Calfee in the way that is most fitting, and so I'm sure he won't mind if you sneak down for a little snack, okay? All right, I am so honored and thrilled that we have two amazing Master of Ceremonies here tonight to make sure that we stay orderly, of course, which is we have two of our finest on the federal judiciary, the Honorable Robert J. Luck, U.S. Circuit Judge for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Honorable Catherine Kimball Mizell, U.S. District Judge for the Middle District of Florida. So I'm assured that they will treat this like a courtroom and keep us all in line, right? So don't get too rowdy. It's my honor to welcome the judges here, and I'm going to hand it off to them, and they will be masters of ceremony for tonight's very special event. And I just want to say how thrilled we are to host this event. Dennis.
I forgot my gavel, so.
Well, I was about to say I rarely disagree with the dean, but I think this is an occasion to get rowdy. So please do, So please do get a little rowdy. Dean, thank you so much, Dean McAllister. As the dean mentioned, Judge Mizell and I have the unenviable task of emceeing, of being masters of ceremony for this evening's event. It's unenviable in that collectively we're going to try in the short time that we have together to capture and reflect Professor Calfee's incredible legacy over the course of a couple of hours. Not an easy thing to do. It's a challenging task to be sure for anybody.
During the course of this evening, we're going to hear from multiple speakers celebrating Professor Calfee and all the great work he's done. Of course, there's been much to do, and rightly so, about his academic contributions and his tenure teaching. But we also, this evening, are going to share more than that, because Professor Calfee has been far more of an influence on a deeper and more personal level. He really has become family to so many of us here this evening.
Now, there are a number of ways that we could illustrate how impactful Professor Calfee has been on all of us. But just one quick idea. A show of hands here for everybody where Professor Calfee has showed up at a life event in your life. How many? Look around. I want everyone to just look around. That's more than half the room.
And while his impact certainly extends beyond these two areas, tonight this program is going to highlight two that have a particular Professor Calfee demeanor to them, right? The Graduate Tax Program and the Florida Law Review. So we're going to hear from speakers from both of those contingencies, and they're going to share photos and memories of all that Professor Calfee has meant to us.
So to start off, I'd like to invite Lauren Detzel to the podium. Ms. Detzel received her law degree from UF Law, where she served as executive editor of the Law Review. She currently serves as Dean Mead's Estate and Succession Planning Group. She was also an adjunct professor in the tax program. So she hits Law Review and tax, but she's going to focus on tax. And Lauren, we're turning over the podium to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, let me start by saying how much Dennis means to me. Some of you all who may know me know that I, let's just say I spent a lot of money on clothes. And so I had an absolutely beautiful black cocktail dress that I was going to be wearing here tonight. And it's doing a wonderful job sitting on my bed in Orlando in the hang-up bag. And I called Dennis when I got here and figured this out. Said, I can't do it. There's no way. I'm wearing jeans. Okay. I almost never wear jeans. And I'm wearing jeans. And he said, no, you have to come. And so this is how much you mean to me, that I showed up here in jeans to do this. Because about 2 hours ago, I said, no way. Okay. So where's the first slide? Let me go back just a minute. It's not going back. The first one is not loading. Where's Mike? It's not loading. Okay, forget the first slide. The first slide says, Dennis Calfee, this is your life. So I'm going to do a little slideshow of Dennis's life. So it all began back in 1945 in the small town of Pasco, Washington. And look at the little kitty and the turtle. Dennis has always been a friend to animals as well. All right, and now here we have, is this a Gerber baby or what? Is that not adorable? And then we have to look at his family. He had 4 sisters. Melanie, Chatty, Faye, and Molly. Okay, now let's fast forward to school. And I know, look at that picture. Sorry, I had to go some to find these pictures, Dennis. So he graduated from Gonzaga, undergraduate in 1968, law school in 72, and then, of course, he headed east and came to the UF graduate tax program in its initial year, very first year. All right, we're going to talk about family now. So here we have Dennis and Peggy, beginning and as they get a little older. And then here are 3, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yes, here are 3 generations of Calfees, 2 sons, his father, and Dennis there. Are you still playing golf, Dennis? And then parenthood comes along. We have Ryan and Michael, and then we have Christina. And here they are in their, and I know you guys are here tonight. Sorry to embarrass you. There are a few more. Okay. Just bear with it. And so here's adolescence, and here they're all grown up. And now, here we go. Dennis and Peggy get to join the Grandparents Club, which I think is the absolute best club that anybody can be a member of. I have 11, and it's I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so here's the first 2, Sanjay and Anya. And then here we are. Dennis is Superman. Sanja is with him. They're superhero capes, and this is so indicative. Dennis has been a Superman to all of us. And here he is fishing with his grandson and granddaughter. And look how cute they are. Is that not adorable? And now here is a picture of most of the Calfees, not all of them, but we have Ryan and his wife and Dennis, and we have Christina and Michael and another Michael, right? And then we have Sanja and Anya. And now the next page is the one that really counts, because this is Dennis and Peggy and the grandchildren, okay? All about the grandchildren. And so we now have Sanjay, Anya, we have Avery, Riley, and Jackie, and the really important one in there is the grand dog. That's Gracie. Okay? That's Michael's child. Now let's go to tax teaching. Here we go. This is where it all started. Back in 1975 and 76, after he graduated, he became a visiting professor. They started the program of having the assistant, usually the one with the highest grade point average, hold over to teach, and so that was Dennis. And you'll see there the icons in the front row sitting, the icons of the graduate tax program. Some of us in this room were lucky to have every single one of them as a professor. And I was lucky to have Dennis also early on. I've known Dennis for 50 years. And then here he is, more pictures of him teaching, and this is one I love, okay? Any of our tax people can figure out which class he's teaching here? Income tax of the states and trusts. We see D&I up there. We see section 661, 663. This is one of his favorite classes that he teaches, and nobody teaches it like Dennis. And here we go. Here's more of Dennis. This is Dennis. Is this not Dennis? He teaches very well with his hands. All of him. All right. Now, I don't know if you can see this detail, but on the whiteboard, there are 3 little houses. I'm not sure what that was. Was that the mommy house and the daddy house and the baby house? I don't know. But on one of those houses, there's a rocking chair outside on the porch with somebody drinking a drink. Foreshadowing retirement here? Okay. And there's another theme that we have tonight that we're going to talk about, and that is it's a family thing. We've already seen people raise their hands at all of the life events that Dennis has participated in. And this is a theme that has gone his entire life. And he did in the classroom also. So here is Jean Coker, who was in one of the very early classes. And she was pregnant with her daughter Elizabeth when she took the class. And then there's Elizabeth, who was pregnant when she took Calfee's class many years later. And then there's Helen. And unfortunately, I think, you may not be around for teaching for Helen. Maybe he'll come back. Okay. And Jean is here. Just raise your hand. I know she came. At least she was here. I thought I saw her. But anyway, Jean, thank you for sharing that. Oh, Dennis said that it wasn't fair when Elizabeth was taking the exam, okay, because she'd already seen the questions, in utero. Okay, so now travels. And this isn't just about traveling. This is teaching. So, the United States was too small a world for Dennis. He had to branch out and show the whole world the incredible professor that he was. And so here he is, professor in the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. Then we go to Montpellier, I can't say that, something like that, France. And then we are in Taipei, Taiwan, okay, where he was a faculty member of the Academy of International Tax. And then Beijing, he was a visiting professor at Beijing University. There may have been others, but those were certainly examples of how his reach is global. All right, now let's look at some accolades. There are many accolades, so I had to, just look at the really important ones. And the first one is, now Dennis graduated from the LLM program in the spring of 75. He started teaching in 75. 75, 76 was the holdover year. Okay? And in 78, 79, and again in 80, 81, he was the outstanding teacher of the year for the whole law school, not just the graduate tax program, the entire law school. He was only teaching 2 years, and he was teacher of the year. Yes. Exactly. And of course, Gonzaga wanted to get in on the awards here. And so in 1999, they gave him a Distinguished Alumni Merit Award. He got international awards also. He was awarded one of Taiwan's most prestigious honors, the Public Finance Specialty Medal, for spending more than 20 years assisting in the development of public finance in the Republic of China and training local tax officers to deal with international tax. Pretty amazing. And then he was also named the Distinguished Accredited Estate Planner in 2008. And when he received this award, he was only the 3rd professor to ever receive this award. And it was presented by Jeff Scroggins, who you'll hear about later. And then here's the one that I think is the most important, because it's from the tax section of the Florida Bar. There are a number of us here who were very closely connected with or chairs of the section. And many years ago, in 1981, we started giving an annual award to somebody who had made major contributions to the advancement of the practice of law and exemplifies the highest standards of competence and integrity. And we named it after Gerald T. Hart, which is one of our chairs who was, unfortunately died young in a plane crash. And Dennis was the 2013 recipient of the Gerald Hart Outstanding Tax Attorney of the Year. Yes. And I will tell you that I have been to many of the award dinners, and the attendance at Dennis's was so large, we had problems with the room. We had to squeeze people in because so many people wanted to be there to honor him. And this is the actual award that's being presented to him by Mike Lampert, who was chair of the section then, and Richie Conator. All right, friends. So Dennis, we could put pictures of everybody in this room up there. Okay? Thousands of people could be up here. But we asked Dennis who were his friends that he would want to honor up here. And he asked to honor 2 former professors, Frank McCoy and Joe Little, and then Steve Lind. Okay, so Steve is one of the people who started the program. He was one of those original people sitting in the front row in that picture, an icon. And in fact, Steve Lind had a very well-known, well-respected treatise that it was Stevens Maxfield Lind, and then of course Dennis started working on it, Stevens Maxfield Lind and Calfee, right? And Calfee has been doing that book and updating it for how many years? 50? A lot. And then there are a couple other professors, Skip Williams and Marty Burke, and then anybody recognize this picture? People who went to the law school here know what I'm talking about. You're kidding me. Steve Langston, could you please stand? Come on. Come on. Yay! I spent many of my hard-earned dollars at your facility buying many times the only thing I ate during the day. But he sold books. Wilbert sold books and all kinds of things, and unfortunately closed in 2013 or something around there. Okay? But certainly a legend, and we all will remember him. Thank you so much. And then Larry Locken and Larissa Litsky. Larry Locken, again, another one of the icons that helped start the LLM program. And here we are with Dennis and Peggy at a museum fundraiser with the Friels and Steve Lind. I'm sorry, Mike. I told you there was a picture that you might not love, but sorry about that. And then here he is with his fantasy friends. So this is hanging out with the Duke. And then Steve Martin, and here's my favorite one, the Pope. All right, and then love for the Gators. We were ever so lucky that he chose to stay here in Gainesville and has made this kind of an impact on all of us. And this was something that I really didn't know about until recently, and that is he was on a professional sports counseling panel that assisted athletes in transitioning from collegiate sports competitions to professional organizations by interviewing potential sports agents and advising athletes with contract negotiations. Some of the people that he helped are up there, such as Tim Tebow, maybe, a name we might recognize, the Pouncey brothers. And I imagine that the way football has changed, your services might not be as needed as they used to be. They probably have agents before they even get here. Okay. Seventh grade. Okay. And then last is Dennis and Peggy with Albert. And, oops, no, that was the Pouncey. Here we are with Albert. And so this was a story. This was just a little tiny bit of a story of Dennis's life, because we were doing a little fundraising, which you'll hear about later, and everywhere I went, first of all, everybody I asked contributed. All you have to do is say Dennis Calfee, and I used to say that all the time. You know, he roped me into being an adjunct professor in 1989 for 33 years, and Dennis would ask, and he knew when he started, I need a favor. He knew you were cooked, okay, because there was no way you could say no. And so not only did everybody contribute, but everybody had a story. There is a story, a Dennis story, where he has impacted the lives of so many, many, many people. I am just very thrilled to be able to call him my friend. Dennis. Okay, so next we are going to hear from some of his colleagues who have taught with him, and we're going to have 4 of them come up together here, and it is Dean Friel, Dean Jerry, Dean Tritt, and Yariv Broner. I'm sorry, I apologize. I was still basking in the Dean Tritt thing. Maybe that's out of the bag here, but can you all come up, please? These are people who have known Dennis for a very, very, very long time and have taught with him. And we appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and there'll be more about some of you all later.
Hi, Dennis. Hi, Peggy. Hello, everybody. But I'm going to talk to Dennis because that's why we're here. Dennis, we met 23 years ago when I rolled through here as a dean candidate. And I think I can remember our very first conversation because it was at Mike Friel's house when he was hosting a wine and cheese party for the dean candidates. And that's where we had the grape rolling across the floor incident. You remember that? Yes, you remember that. Where I could demonstrate my problem-solving skills in your presence. And I made an impression on you because you still remember the grape rolling across the floor and how I handled it. But I'll tell you what, you've made a greater impression on me, and let me tell you why. Because back then, even then, one of my favorite quotes was from a friend of mine who was a fellow dean in another school. He's now president at Syracuse University. And it was something like this, that he was talking about law professors. And he said, with the exception of a very few of us, a very, very few of us, most of us change the world more through our students than through what we write. And as I've come to think about you, Dennis, over these years, you are one of the greatest examples ever of someone who has changed the world through their students. And I don't mean just through what you teach, and I don't mean just through all the jobs you found helping people for decades. I mean the way you have modeled professionalism, character, integrity, honesty, civility, the respect for the dignity of other people, and how we are to act in our relationships with our friends in the workplace. So I am thrilled that a part of my career could overlap with yours. And it's a real privilege for me to be here to join everyone else in saluting you. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, there are probably two people that I would speak for them on a stage in the world, everybody who knows me, and Dennis is one of them. Two things, not so much of a war story, but there are probably two people that will call me before 8 a.m. in the morning. One is my mother. And the thing I spoke a little bit before in the reception with Carrie Ryan was here, and both of us immediately said about this, well, he calls you whenever he calls you, but it's never social, right? It's always work. It's always something relevant. And the second thing I want to say is really from my heart is that the nice thing that Dennis and Mike was here on the stage with me taught me more than anybody else is that when you do the right thing, you can sleep very well at night. You just continue to do the right thing. So thank you very much.
I want to use a tired old cliche from a tired old man. Dennis, I'm thinking of as a man of many hats. There was the wise old man, great figure in tax law. I've been an admirer of Dennis's for a very long time, ever since I was a teenager. Let me mention one of Dennis's hats, that of the supply sergeant for the law school. You need a new car? Dennis will line it up for you. A contractor to work on your house? Dennis knows one. An intentionally defective grantor trust? Dennis can put that together for you as well. Another hat that I would like to talk more about is that of Dennis, the master fundraiser. But there are deans in the audience, and I need to be careful. But if you called Dennis and asked him a tax question that involved money, they all did, you really couldn't be surprised if Dennis turned to ask you, have you thought about all the law review or all the tax program did for your career? And he'd leave that question hanging there. And there's Dennis the scholar. His estate and gift and generation skipping treatise is hands down the best there is. There's just nothing that compares to it. And I think of that and Dennis's scholarship as focused on serving students, serving judges, and serving the profession. And his treatise exemplifies that. And then there's Dennis, the Godfather. There may be some of you here admitted to the graduate tax program because of Dennis. Dennis saw something in you and in your background, and you came. As a classroom teacher, there were some of you who may have had names like Flash, such and such, the nicknames. And how many of you heard Dennis say, "Give me your resume, and let me go to work on finding a job for you," with the expectation that later on you will be someone Dennis can turn to for the next student in line. Dennis will be incredibly missed by every student who's encountered him, so please keep in touch with him. And I think of Dennis, the consoler in chief. There were a couple of photos shown earlier in your presentation. If I heard about a faculty member, retired faculty member, or retired staff member who was ill and having a difficult time, the person who had already heard about it and was already spending time with that person, as much time as needed, was Dennis. Dennis was there for so many people when they really needed it. And finally, let me say something about Dennis, the family man. I met Dennis and Peggy in Missoula, Montana. And I met them there in the middle of December in freezing weather, fog, slush, and Dennis, family man that he is, had insisted that every member of his family come from balmy Florida, 75 degrees, to freezing Missoula, Montana, to be socked in for a few days in Missoula. Dennis, how much you have meant to so many of us is something I've always wanted to tell you in person. But every time I came to your office, you were on the phone. So now you can't be on the phone. And I can tell you how much you've meant to all of us, Dennis, and how grateful we all are to you for everything you've done for us. Thank you, Dennis.
For those who don't know me, I'm Lee Ford Tritt. I'm the other estate planning professor at the law school. I know many of y'all are looking up here thinking exactly what Dennis is thinking. One, who let you up there with a microphone? Two, why didn't you get that haircut? I apologize. She canceled the appointment. But it shows how much Dennis is loved that Lauren would come here and present in jeans and I put on a suit. So it's just one of those nights. For 21 years, I have lived in Dennis Calfee's shadow. It's true. You would think I would be upset by this, but his shadow isn't cold. His shadow is warm, it's golden, it's full of love. And I've enjoyed living in your shadow. Dennis is an amazing person. Although I didn't go to the Florida LLM program to get my LLM, Dennis loves me almost as much as he loves all of you who graduated from the Florida LLM. Through the years, Dennis has been a wonderful role model, advisor, friend, horrible matchmaker, still single, 21 years, Dennis, horrible, but also a nurturer. And I've had this dichotomy with Dennis over the years where I've lived in his shadow, but he's also been this nurturer. And this started early on when I got here, that I would just have to be part of this. Dennis and I were asked to speak in Orlando. It's my first and last speech I've ever given with Dennis Calfee. We drive to Orlando, and I'm a young buck, and I think, you know what, I give a good speech, and I know people. And Dennis seemed nervous in the car, and Dennis was driving us, and Peggy packed us treats and things like that. And we get to Orlando, and I go, Dennis, if you get hung up on anything, pass it to me, I got your back. We walk into this room, and it was like I was the opening act for Taylor Swift. Everybody's just like, Dennis, Dennis, Dennis. And so we get up there and I'm like, what is going on? So we sit up there and I'm thinking, oh, Dennis is all nervous and everything. And I give my speech and Dennis comes in and is like, oh my gosh, that charming stuff, that hallelujah, I don't know, the things he does. And I'm just like, what's going on? And then we get to the question and answer section and every question was for Dennis. Like Professor Calfee, things that I talked about, they're asking Dennis. So I start to kind of space out, right? And I'm like, I'll just let Dennis handle this. And then I get one question, and it's on a GST thing that I didn't cover, and I didn't know. And Dennis had to cover me. I think on the way home, I was kind of looking dejected. And in true Dennis form, he pulled over to the exit, went into McDonald's, and bought me a McFlurry to make me feel better. He handed it to me, and it was like a McDonald's commercial. He handed it to me and goes, hang in there, kid. 21 years later, I'm hanging in there with you. I'm with you. Wow, Dennis, you've been amazing. And I have to say, there's this aspect of Dennis that has always impressed me. And it's his, well, we have a lot of estate planners here, right? I think we have a lot of estate planners here. There's something we do in estate planning. We really care about intergenerational shifts, right? We care about not only transferring wealth intergenerationally, but knowledge, tradition, wisdom. And that's the amazing thing about our tax program that sets us apart from everybody else. That we have, that parents and children and grandchildren who come to our program, and there's this real connection that people make. And that's why we're one of the best tax programs in the world, because of Dennis and Dean Frill, and gosh, all the hard work from Dean Charlene Luke, who's here, and Yariv and Steve Willis in the back, and gosh, I miss Steve Lynn, and all the other professors who used to be here and are here. But we have this intergenerational aspect to it, and Dennis and I play this game. I have a long wind-up. I'm sorry, I'll get to my point, but if my former students know, I have a long wind-up. Dennis and I play this game. It's like X's and O's. It's TTs for CCs. Team Trit versus Calfee camp. And we kind of throw students into different camps, and I'll go, oh, they're in Team Trit. And Calfee will go, no, they're Calfee camp people. And I'm looking at all of Team Trit people out here who have been traitors and would say you're on Calfee's team, and that really bothers me. Now, I want to say in this battle that we have, Dennis has a 30-year lead on me, right? Like, he's been at it 30 years. But within my 21 years, it's amazing how he wins all these battles. I could go to him and I'll say, hey, I have this student. She's taken me for 5 classes. 5 classes. That's like minoring in trit, right? Her major's law, her minor's trit. And I'll go, and she's my research assistant. And Dennis will go, I introduced her parents. I'm like, I'll go to him and I'll bring something else up. I have this student, he's my research assistant. They take care of my dogs. I'm going to go to his wedding. He goes, I was there for his birth. Like, just so matter of fact. And he wins all these things. And I think it's this connection, right? This intergenerational connection that he has that's so amazing. And it's wonderful, and it sets our program apart. So I love this, and it's with his, and he does this for everybody, but especially his research assistants, like my research assistants versus his research assistants. And, Dennis has had about 150 research assistants, and he knows them all. And he's not only impact their careers, but their personal lives, and he's there for them, and he can tell you things about them and their children. And so this whole idea of intergenerational, passing of wisdom and these research assistants, I think it would be wonderful we see that in action. And I don't think there's a better example from another CC, and that's the Commodore clan. And the Commodores, I think Richie was your original research assistant 80 years ago. I don't know how long, I won't even say it. Then there was Andy. Now, it's your night, Dennis, so I'm not going to claim Andy, but Andy was one of my first students, and we are pretty close. But you can claim him as yours. You were there at his birth. And then there's Matt, and, they're your team. But I would like to invite the Commodores up to, talk about research assistants and intergenerational aspects.
So that is a fact. Professor Calfee was there the day I was born. And also another fact is he probably helped out my mom more than my father because he was suffering from food poisoning in a room downstairs below when it was going on. But Professor Calfee, needless to say, has been a huge impact in all of our lives. When I go around and I tell people I went to the tax program at the University of Florida, I have instant validity. But when I tell people I was Professor Calfee's research assistant, that's it. Hands down, they know I know what I'm talking about, instant respect, and it's because of you and your reputation, and definitely the Commodores play off that. So thank you very much there. But as Professor Calfee's research assistant, we get to know each other very well, right? First of all, you realize, updating the treatise, going over cases. All right, Andrew, great job, but this is really how you have to do it. And, maybe there was a little help there. But more than that, you get to know each other on a personal level. And for me, we would talk about relationships. We talk about maybe rodent problems in my house. And Professor Calfee is the only person to this day that felt comfortable enough to offer a Commodore a gun to protect themselves sleeping at night because he had a rodent infestation. Just a very trusting person. But no, besides that, he's been to all of our weddings. He lets us all know that I was definitely the smartest one between the three of us because of our grades in his class, which I always appreciate. Other than that too, he also was there to help. I was very involved in law school and all extracurricular activities. And if I ever needed anything, Professor Calfee was there as my cheerleader, helping us out. And it's just such a great honor to have you as part of our lives and really help us become the tax lawyers that we are. Commodores, we breed little people and tax lawyers that go to the University of Florida. But Professor Calfee, you are in our DNA. And I think you're in a lot of the students' DNA. And I would say just by the amount of people that are here today, it's amazing what you've done. And I think a measure of success is what your fan club is, and you're top notch. So. Love you, Professor. I just can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me. You've been just a huge inspiration and a big fan for me, and always you exude positivity to me, to students. Being your research assistant was one of my greatest pleasures, and I can't express enough to everybody how much Professor was a help not only to me but to all students, current and former. He would just sit on the phone and just get calls after calls, or students come into his office just saying, can you help me with this personal issue, or can you help me with this question, or I really need a job. And he always delivered. You always delivered, came through in the clutch, and I just don't know how you did it, but thank you so much, and you're the best. So thank you.
I'm up here to tell you about and focus on the intergenerational memories from research assistants and students. And what we felt was the best way to do that was to get some intergenerational or research assistants two of them, or one was had a student and one was a research assistant. So the intergenerational mix between the two. So I spoke to David and Elizabeth Bowers. Elizabeth was a research assistant of Dennis in 2013. And her father, David Bowers, was a student of Dennis's in 1981. And we have asked the Bowers family to say a few words about their personal relationship with Dennis. But unfortunately, David and Elizabeth were unable to attend. However, they would like me to read their personal memory note to Dennis. Professor Calfee, we are sorry we cannot join you for this well-deserved celebration for your career, but we have a birthday party for Elizabeth's 4-year-old Jackson in the morning. It has been a blessing to have you as a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. We count ourselves lucky to be part of the group where you taught both parent and child. Our only regret is that you retired before you were able to teach Jackson. You have profoundly impacted our lives and the lives of countless others. Thank you. With gratitude, David and Elizabeth Bowers. Thank you, David and Elizabeth. By the way, just for a second, we said 150 research assistants of Dennis's. How many of them are here? Give me a hand raise on research assistants. That's pretty good, huh? Okay, next, we're going to talk about graduate tax, the graduate tax students and memories that they would have, and they have. And Dennis, during his 50-year tenure at the law school, taught tax law to how many people, you think? About 10,000 law students in the graduate tax program in law school. 10,000. Oh my God. So what we did is we asked one of them, Kristen Keene, a triple Gator, 1997 JD, 1998 LLM, and 1999 visiting assistant professor, to come up and talk about how Professor Calfee impacted her life. Kristen?
No pressure. 10,000? 1. I got this. I have notes. Normally, I don't like notes, but I have 5 minutes, and otherwise I'm just going to go off the rails about all the stories that we have. So it is absolutely my pleasure, obviously, to be here tonight to celebrate you. Yay. We all know that Dennis himself is an institution. And we know the incredible impact that he has made through his blood, sweat, and tears over the last 50 years for these other institutions, University of Florida, its College of Law, and our beloved graduate tax program. I have the honor and pleasure of speaking briefly, I promise, about how Dennis has affected my life personally. Because we know that as amazing as he is as a professor and as an advocate, he's an even more wonderful human being. I was telling Leaford, I said, everything I was going to say has already been said. Like, I mean, because there are themes that run through Dennis's interactions with everyone. I have been blessed in my life to know more than one individual who has taught me both directly and through example how to be a better person in big ways and small ways. And I've often reflected on how lucky I am to have had those people in my life and how sad it would be to be somebody who didn't have one of those people or wasn't able to recognize them. And I was thinking what a delightful place to be where everyone in this room has had one of those people because we all know Dennis Calfee. So, as Richie mentioned, I was in the JD program, and that's where I first met Dennis. I was a Russian lit major, so I had not had tax before. I did not want to be a tax lawyer. I was not one of those people who thought that that was a thing, did not know that was a thing. My dad was a mechanic. So I had my first tax class with Mike Friel, and after, a whole semester of this with the hair, I thought, this is cool. The Fonz has got nothing on this guy. Tax is cool. So then I took another tax class. And I was so impressed with Dennis's enthusiasm and his deep knowledge. I mean, it was mesmerizing. Even though I was not particularly interested in estate and gift taxation, I was like, oh, it's all right, it's fine. I really liked income taxes. But I went on to the LLM program, and I was drawn to domestic international income tax, and so I didn't actually take any of Dennis's classes in the LLM program. And I was not a research assistant, much to the surprise of many. They're like, weren't you a research assistant? I'm like, no, I just think he's awesome. And then I did go on to join the UF faculty as a visiting assistant professor the following year. And I do have to say, I know Lauren has mentioned it and Leaford has mentioned it, it was one of the coolest things in the UF LLM program, and I believe it is coming back, which is wonderful, where they invite a recent graduate back to teach and give that person an opportunity to be familiar with academia, because it is hard to break into that if you're practicing. And going from being in the LLM program to hanging out in the faculty lounge with Dennis Calfee and Larry Locken and Mike Friel, it was like a dream. I was like, if you talk about imposter syndrome, that was it. But it was one of the most humbling and amazing and wonderful years, and I was honored to do it. So even though I was not one of Dennis's research assistants, and I had no intention of going into estate planning, Dennis did for me what he did for all of us in the tax program. He stopped and he really focused when we spoke about anything, tax or personal stuff. He treated me like a professional. He made me feel special. He made me feel seen. And I know you all know what I'm talking about. And he made me feel cared for, And that lasts a lifetime, because when you're connected with Dennis, you're connected for a lifetime. Even when, I would come back and wasn't feeling well, and he ran out to Publix and got me crackers. So I wasn't feeling good. Especially the LLM year can be an incredibly stressful year, as many of us know. And a lot of us are, unsure of what's coming, and we're overwhelmed. And to have that presence, Dennis really embodies what makes our LLM program so special and stand out, in spite of it being, humble origins in sleepy Gainesville. There's a reason that people come here to the tax program. And it's the home to intellectual giants, and it always has been. But they're giants who care about you as a person, who care about your success, and who evidence that day after day after day. And Dennis made sure that every tax student felt seen, me included. And I was not a shining star. I was not a darling of the estate and gift curriculum. I'm not even a commenter. I mean, come on. And yet, after graduation, Dennis stays there with you. When I was ready to start practicing after I left the program, I was actually in our old graduate tax offices, which was awesome. That was great. The visiting assistant professor got to hang out in the graduate tax office, which was an amazing, amazing thing to do. But when I was ready to start practicing, true to form, Dennis got on the phone, called Nat Dolliner at Carleton Fields, and I was there for 26 years until I recently moved to Trenum Law this year. And true to form, Dennis was one of the first calls I got when I made the move. You know, I didn't start my practice as an estate and gift attorney, as you know, but when I did start broadening my practice at the request of my firm to do more succession planning, Dennis said, "Hey, feel free to come audit a sub J class." And I thought, "You're going to call on me, aren't you?" And he said, "Oh, yeah. Yeah." I'm like, "Ooh, hard pass. Hard pass. I am not doing that anymore." But Dennis's impact on me and so many others has been subtle and profound. We hear him in our heads, right? When we're working and we're thinking, and we need to be simultaneously practical and yet always doing the right thing. We've repeated his sayings over and over in our head many, many, many times because that's where the rubber meets the road. He leads by example, for sure, but he also has, you know, stretched out his hands to us and affirmatively brought us along with him. Like it is intentional. And you're always so focused, I'm not going to cry. You're always so focused on other people and how you can help. You've always been focused on your students and what's best for us, and I have strived so hard in my practice and in my life to take that to heart. To always come to the room the most prepared. I love the fact that this man still prepares for class. I'm like, what? Really? Oh yeah, always the most prepared, the most engaged, the most genuinely invested in helping people and giving them the support and the information they need to make the best decisions for them. Not the decision you want for them, but the best decision for them. And I bring that into my work all the time. And to let them know that somebody always has their back. So thank you, Dennis, for being endlessly giving of yourself and for always looking out for me and all of your students. I am truly a better person and definitely a better tax lawyer for knowing you, as we all are. Thank you.
Kristen, did you have a nickname? He loved to give people nicknames in the class. Did anyone here have a nickname in the class? Yeah, we had some. They were great nicknames. What was your nickname? Do you remember? Yeah.
104,000 chickens at home.
Really? Oh my God. Does anyone else want to give up the nickname? Two fingers? He broke his finger. 2 fingers in the first class. Anyone else? Yes. Sunshine. I like that. Anyone else? Excuse me? Betsy Lou? Lindsay Lou, I'm sorry, Lindsay Lou. Okay. All right, continuing our theme of intergenerational personal reflections and memories from graduate tax students, Matt Shear, 2015, whose father Mark was also a student of Dennis in 1987, had some memories and personal reflections that he wanted to share with us tonight, but he's unable to attend. So he has prepared these memory notes on how Dennis has impacted his life. There are not many people, if any, who are lucky enough to come across that leave a mark on the world the way Dennis Calfee has. The people coming from near and far to Gainesville on a Friday night when the Gators are away are a testament to that. The countless more of us who wish we could be there but couldn't is more evidence. I'm sure that there are countless stories in this room of which will or have been shared of how Dennis impacted people's lives. During some hard times personally, Dennis made sure to regularly and make sure I was doing okay. As his research assistant, I had a front row seat to seeing him do his countless time for others and help people with all sorts of things simply because it was the right thing to do and because he knew he could and because he was Dennis. I know that this is him. I know that I am just a better lawyer for the lessons I learned from Dennis in the classroom and when discussing things in practice, but a better person to have him as a friend and an example of the impact of a person who can have on another person's world. And since Richie wanted to do an intergenerational story, I don't remember the full estate plan I proposed on my gratuitous transfers exam, but my dad, who had Dennis for gratuitous transfers in the 80s, has reminded me on more than one occasion that Professor Calfee's exam was his favorite because he had a proposed estate plan and asked what was wrong with it and what should be done differently. My dad's answer, which got him the book award, nothing. Nothing. That estate plan seems to me to be a pretty perfect metaphor for Dennis Calfee as a professor, role model for lawyers, the standard where there is nothing to change. Thank you, Matt. And by the way, I think we have another duo here of students. David and Finn Presley, are you here? They had to leave? Okay, but they were. They also. So we had a bunch of duos and one trio. Andrew, you did a great job, by the way. Okay. I would like to call Lauren Detzel back up to the podium to discuss the history of the Florida Tax Institute and how it was created, and to conclude with some really big news.
So, I was an adjunct professor since 1989, teaching estate planning, and a couple of friends from the tax section, including somebody who came and co-taught with me, David Pratt, Don Tesher, and I, sat around for years saying, why doesn't the University of Florida Graduate Tax Program have a tax institute? NYU has one, Miami has Heckerling, at Notre Dame, Georgetown. We're the second best ranked program in the country. Why don't we have one? And we talked about it so much, we finally said, we either got to quit talking about it or do something about it. So we decided to do something about it. And so we went and talked to Dennis and Mike Friel and said, can we do this? And we explored it, and it turned out that if we're going to do it and call it the University of Florida Tax Institute, then they had to be in charge of everything. They had to control the money, the speaking, every single aspect of it. And well, that just didn't go over so well with us. Luckily, Mike and Dennis were able to talk them into letting us call it the Florida Tax Institute and having the brochure be orange and blue. And of course, another part of that was that the proceeds that we made went for scholarships for the LLM program. And when we created this, we had three goals. We said, one, we want to showcase the Florida tax program. We want the world to know how great it is. And so we want to put on this 3-day-long program and showcase the professors and great teachers from all over. And we also wanted to involve the students and let them come and see what it's like and interact for days with practitioners. And they did. Many people actually ended up getting jobs from connections that they made at the Florida Tax Institute. And we wanted to provide some scholarship money for the grad tax program. And so we started working on it, Dennis and Donnie and I, and Dennis and Mike, and we had a framework, and we went out and realized that we didn't have any money. It's kind of hard to put together a 3-day program with absolutely no money whatsoever. And so we were very fortunate, the Bessemer Trust Company, from the strength of the people that were working on it, they gave us $20,000 as a sponsor. And they've been a wonderful sponsor of ours ever since. And that made all the difference in the world. And then we went and talked to the Grand Hyatt over in Tampa, and with a personal guarantee of somebody, they said, okay, we'll let you have our facility for 3 days, even though we had, no history whatsoever. And we got to working on it, and we knew that we needed a wonderful group of people to help us put it together. So we put together these people, and I want to just call them out and have you stand up, and don't sit down until I'm finished, and hold your applause to the end. These are people who made this program, the Florida Tax Institute, come alive. Our first program was in 2014, and we've done it every year since. And it's gotten better and better every year. And we have had most of the students come down. We pay for them to come and actually attend the program, and I think it's been a huge success from that standpoint alone. But these people helped put this whole thing together. Joylyn Acosta, Les Barnett, Bruce Boker, Jack Beauvais, Dennis Calfee, Richie Commodore, me, Mike Friel, Mike Koner, stand up. Mike Koner, stand up. Lou Nostro, Brian Phillips, David Pratt, who's not here, Jeff Scroggins, who you saw in a picture earlier, and Don Tesher, whose flight got canceled. And so if we would please, everybody give a round of applause to all these people. Many of whom are still working on the Institute today. And it's gotten to be a very well-known program. We have great attendance. The speakers are all nationally known speakers. We have people come from all over the country, even outside the country, to attend our Tax Institute. It's something that we're pretty proud of. And over the years, we've put together a fair amount of money that we've managed to put back into the school's scholarship fund. And we announced this a little earlier, but it's not been widely known, that we met and decided that from here on out, we believe that the Florida Tax Institute should now be known as the Dennis A. Calfee Tax Institute. And you have to still come. We want to see you there. Well, that ends it for the tax side, and I think we're going to turn it over to the law review.
Wow. That was long and amazing. I say that not being facetious. You see what impact Professor Calfee has had in the tax world. But what we're about to do is to show you half the people here were going to get food and went to the bathroom. And that's because half the people here were impacted in a completely different way, having nothing at all to do with tax. And yet, his influence is felt by hundreds of students he counseled and mentored in the same exact way you've heard from the tax program as the faculty advisor of the Florida Law Review.
Judge Luck and I are but two of the many examples who are forever grateful to you, Professor Calfee, for fundamentally changing the trajectory of our professional careers. Dean Friel already said this, but you are the godfather of clerkships. That is not a joke. I was not going to clerk, and I got trapped in your office one day and was told, you will clerk. And 4 clerkships later, including at the Supreme Court, that is all because of you. I would not have done that. And certainly I think Judge Luck and I would not be on the federal bench without your influence.
There's a Yiddish word called a shidduch. It's when two people are put together, generally for marriage. Professor Calfee sat me next to someone who was clerking without my knowledge, knowing that would put us together. And because of that, I applied, I clerked, and everything happened in my career as a result of that meeting. To help recognize Professor Calfee's decades-long involvement with the Florida Law Review, I'd like to welcome Laura Ann Foraker Gardner to the podium. Ms. Gardner served as a Law Review editor-in-chief, just as Judge Mizell and I did, en route to receiving her JD and later her LLM from the Florida Law.
Wow, this is a good turnout. I'm glad we're in this great space. I hope everybody goes and takes a look. Great to see the family here. And when I was preparing to speak to you all tonight, mindful of the brevity that I'm supposed to keep to because of our ambitious agenda, I finally settled on a single word that I believe encompasses everything Dennis Calfee is and everything he does. And that word is champion. A champion stands up for others and for causes, advocating for their best interests. Being a champion is what Dennis Calfee does for any organization that he serves and for every individual that he mentors or teaches. The digital slideshow, that album is given as a thank you gift tonight. It reads at the title, "To Professor Calfee, Florida Law Review's Champion for Life." He has earned this title because of everything that he has done and that he continues to do to support the Florida Law Review. He is always mindful of its excellence, its history, and its independence, and we appreciate that. These are just some of the executive boards and law review boards, and it's some depictions of the work that comes in during his time as faculty advisor, which was from '94 to 2016. There's lots of Dunwoody posters that are coming up, and they're from that era, and all of the Pouchers lectures to date will be coming toward the end. It's a history of sorts, but I found out when I was preparing to do this, too late to include it in the album, that I could have gone back 4 or 5 years to when he was an associate dean, because he actually worked with the Florida Law Review for 4 years, 5 years. He's helping me. 5 years before he began as our faculty advisor. I was very fortunate to come in and be an EIC in '95. This is just a small sample, so what I would really like to do right now, and I know some people would like to stretch their legs, I would really like everyone in this room as a Law Review alumni to just stand for a moment, please. If you would, just stand up, okay? I would like people to just take a look around and see how many generations we have here that have come tonight to thank our champion. And if you would, when you're here, just everyone have a seat except anyone who had him for class. Are there a few of us law review people that, because I found out, I kept talking about things, you know, like where the rubber meets the road. And there were people in my group, I'm the only one speaking for the law review tonight that is a crossover into tax, because they really weren't getting it. And I was sort of struggling. So now I know. You can sit down now, but thank you. I think you already have a pretty good idea of how many tax folks we have in the room, so I won't make you all stand back up again. Of everyone, you know, that was just standing, you know how much it's meant to us, to you, to anyone. He always has an open door for all of the students, whether you were a student in class or not. And that's why I know that when I tell you this man's a champion for the people that he teaches and that he mentors, I have been mentored by him and taught by him. And there's no difference. He's there for you. He will help anyone. He is a champion for judges, and I'm not just talking about circuit court judges. I'm talking about, I clerked for a bankruptcy judge. There's a woman here in the audience that also clerked for that same bankruptcy judge. All of his clerks had been LLMs. When I came as a JD, I had said, you know, sir, I didn't take tax. I was really afraid the man would hire me and not understand that I had only had one tax class at that point. You know, it's very important that to him, he sees everyone and he sees opportunities. And he has an uncanny ability to remember who is who and what they like and what they need. And he knew those judges needed good clerks just like any other judge. And everybody benefits from doing a good job. And that's one of the best things about being his student. So I'm going to keep it short because they told me I better. But because I had him in class, I was able to pull a few gems out of my notes and my memory. So brace yourself, you may hear a couple of words back to you because I'm sharing them with him. You'll all just have to hang in there while I do it. One of my favorites, it's a question of competency. Okay, in order to plan, you have to know the rules. Once you know the rule, can you dance with it? If you paid attention in class, you will know whether you could dance with it. And maybe most importantly, when you cannot. Right? He tells you to get in the driver's seat whenever you can. Pick a lane and make sure you know how you got there. These are the kinds of thought processes that come up in practice all the time. And when he is doing that, he is championing your competency, your professionalism, and your ability to help your clients because that's who you will be championing for throughout your career, particularly if you go into private practice, but even when you're clerking, it's very important. As much fun as it is, and I just love being in this space. I've never gotten to be in this space before. I've been enjoying it. I too am a triple Gator, so this is a first for me. I like this, you know. But when you are working with him, he always shared on the last day, and it was subchapter J, and if you see there's some teaching pictures in here when they were talking about income tax of estates and trusts, that one from 07 or 08, that's subchapter J. I recognize those notes. I'm pretty sure, and he does come prepared. You should have seen everybody's face in my group when I threatened to bring props because I wanted to bring my code and my notes and other stuff so you could see. But I noticed in that one of his last lecture, just as prepared as always. You never knew what he was bringing to class. You never know who he's bringing to class. There's a gentleman here tonight that I met because I sat next to him because he's the head of Holland & Knight Estate Planning. And he came to visit our class. And so when it came time to be here, I was excited to see him again. I use his software all the time in what I do for my work. And I knew about him and that I could ask him a question about that because I met him. And that's one of the things that he did in class is he brought people in to class just like he brings people in for these lecture series. It matters that you understand when you are starting out as a student and when you're going to practice that you can talk to people and they will answer questions for you and they will help you be better at what you do and you'll be better for your clients in the long run. Do you still tell everybody the same 3 things on the last day of class? You do? Let's see if I can get them right from my notes. I think my first 2 are a little skimpy, but I got the last one nailed. Okay? He tells you 3 things the last day of subchapter J class. 1, give back and participate in your profession and in your communities. 2, your own clients are the key. And the 3rd, and this is my favorite, do you know what he says is the key to a happy life? Okay? Work, exercise, eat right, and take the time to share with your family and your friends because they are the only thing that gets you close to immortality. Is that right? How about that? My '06 notes didn't let me down. So in my opinion, all of that is great advice. And we all know that had him in class that an OPINION is your opinion, and that and 35 cents will get you a cup of coffee at Wilbur's. All right, everybody stay tuned. There's a quiz next.
All right, good evening. My name is Dabney Ware, and I became a member of the Dennis Calfee fan club in 1995 with the Florida Law Review. I had planned to say I was not one of his students, and I quickly realized I was wrong. That's just not a great starting place for somebody who's supposed to be smart enough to have been on Law Review. The correct statement is that I never took a class from Dennis, but I was definitely one of his students. I suspect most of you were too. In the classroom, in life, or both, or you are here with someone who feels that way. So to test my theory, here's your quiz. And if you're worried about a pop quiz, you can just think about this as a lightning round of Calfee impact. All right, so here's how we're gonna play. I'm gonna mention 10 recollections about Professor Calfee, sometimes referred to as Dennis because he was both professor and friend. If what I say registers with you, raise a hand. If you feel strongly, raise 2. All right, you ready? Let's go. Number 1, Professor Calfee set an example of showing respect to others, especially when there were differences of opinion. He found something nice to say, no matter how difficult the situation. All right, go for it. Number 2, Professor Calfee ended a meeting with Pax, or I love you, go Gators. All right. Number 3, Dennis was professional, but he was also approachable. He was not stiff. 4, Professor Calfee paid attention to the detail and the big picture, short-term goals and long-term consequences, reminding us to consider what decisions meant for us individually and organizationally for the law review. Okay. 5, there was drama and Professor Calfee was calm. Dennis modeled how to approach difficult things with patience, attention, and a ready smile. All right, number 6, Dennis talked about his family and the latest reasons he was proud of them. There were a lot. All right, number 7, Professor Calfee created room for growth and helped steer things in a positive direction, but he did not dictate the path. He pointed to a higher standard, but he was not on a soapbox. He encouraged the very best version of myself. Okay, number 8, Dennis was perpetually busy. He made time for me. Number 9, Professor Calfee expected me to work hard, but not to always work. 10, Dennis showed concern for each person in front of him. That's each, all caps, each person. And the concern was for the whole person. His concern and his interest were never limited to career goals. All right, no need to have kept count. We are all winners for having Dennis in our lives. Dennis, you told me I was out of sight but not out of mind. I believed you. I hope you know it is and always will be mutual. Most of all, I hope tonight that we have properly acknowledged and perhaps repaid a little bit the many smiles you have shared and are responsible for.
How you holding up? Good. Well, you always see Dennis always grabbing his jacket because he's always pulling out one of these bad boys. Now, how many of you have had one of these handed to you at a football game, Maybe found it in your car. Maybe Dennis just handed it to you and he said, I wasn't on the law review. But he said, you should give anyway. You want your name on that wall. Now, we don't know why Dennis did this. Was it the thrill of the race, the chance to get one more pledge on that wall? Or did he just have a side deal with one of the trophy shops in town, so every plaque he made a little 10% cut? It may have been the last one, but what we do know what it was his desire to have a foundation of excellence at the Law Review, to build an institution that would outlast all of us, to have a Law Review that would rise in the rankings, because he knew this endowment would give the Law Review the resources it needed to succeed, to have the editors to be innovative, create new ideas, create new forums, ensure that we had the coveted bagel day. It was also to provide stipends so that the Law Review students could dedicate their time and efforts to increasing the rankings of the Law Review, to making it the best journal and learning those editorial skills that would pay dividends in their careers. And it was to create a base for an independent journal, one that would tackle new ideas, new frontiers, and make us a stronger university, a stronger law school, and an even stronger law review. Dennis had a vision. And as part of that vision, in all of the activities that he does, there were life lessons. It was about teaching us about philanthropy, of giving back for all that is given to us. It's about the commitment to one another, to your brothers and sisters on the Law Review, that you are united together. And it was to remind us to have that mark on that wall of where we got our start, that this was the Law Review that gave us our jumpstart of our careers. He always has a vision, always looking to protect our future by protecting us in the present. And that meant protecting us from our better evils. He was a mensch. He never wanted anything in return. He was always there, kind of as a consigliere, if you will, for the second and third floor, as we would test the waters of what was possible. And I know Dean Jerry's here tonight, so I don't know what the statute of limitations are on things that I did in law school, but we'll test them tonight. I think the degree is still on the wall. I remember the basketball goal, the coffee, the pizza, and the long nights at the Law Review weren't keeping us at bay. We were stressed out, and one day one of our members decided there was a stray dog on the road. So why don't we have a Law Review pet? Well, Keddy was a great pet. Terrible at work quarter edits, not getting his things in on time, and could not be housebroken. So as we noticed more and more wet spots around the Law Review office, we found ways to cover them up. And we thought things were going well, till one day I was at Wilbert's and Steve gets a call from the second floor that I'm to report to Dean Jerry's office. And as I'm walking up the stairs trudging, I see Professor Calfee coming around the corner. And he has that pierced lips look, and I'm looking at Christina and Michael. You all know the one when he's worried and he kind of just goes, oh. And he looks at me and he goes, oh boy, son, what did you do now? And as we walk in, Dean Jerry turns to us and says, gentlemen, I hear there's a dog in the Law Review office. And I had taken evidence, so I knew to only answer the question asked. So I kindly informed him that, no, Dean, there's no dog in the Law Review office right now. Keddy was on a walk at Flowitt Field at the time, so we were safe. Well, Dean Jerry wasn't buying that, and he said, well, gentlemen, there are wet spots on the floor of the Law Review office. And I could see Professor Calfee tapping his toes, wondering what's going to come next out of my mouth. And as I looked at the AC, I said, Dean, I think the AC's leaking. You might want to check on that. That's not safe for the Law Review. And Professor Calfee, the ever-mensch that he was, jumped right in to save me and said, you know, Dean, the temperature has been a little off in the law review office lately. We really should do something about that. Well, Dean Jerry, by none of this, said, gentlemen, why don't you check in about that dog? And as we're walking out, I'm waiting for Professor Calfee of, you shouldn't have done that. And he just looks at me and he goes, just make sure he's out by 6:30 tonight. You have always been there for us in our times of need, in our times of struggles, in our times of stupidity. And as well as you've been there in our times of strength, celebrating our accomplishments, encouraging us. I personally cannot think of a single major life moment in my life since law review that you have not been a part of. You and Peggy inviting Leslie and I up for lunch when we got engaged, being at our wedding, being at both boys when they were born, we still have the gator pillow, to being at Finley's first birthday. I remember calling you that morning, telling you, and 2 hours later, you're at my front door, fishing pole and everything. You are the parable we always hear about of the person who jumps into the hole because they've been there before and know the way out. The memories of the law review may be in the past, but the memories will live on for a lifetime because we've shared them with you. Thank you for all that you do, partner. And in the confessional, I love you.
My name is Jonathan Mann. I served on the review from 2010 to 2012. And unlike the first few speakers or the next few that follow, I was not what you would consider editor-in-chief material. So I was elected executive symposium editor along with the very handsome and talented Selden Ross. Together with Professor Calfee and an amazing board, we organized the inaugural Alan L. Poucher Legal Education Series event in 2011. Martha Barnett, who is here with us tonight in attendance, moderated a panel discussion with Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and some other very distinguished judges. Our first event was held at the Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. Now, that's a venue that was built to host Broadway hits, 1,400 to 1,500 people. And we filled that thing to the rafters. It's hard to imagine that such a successful franchise takes flight without Professor Calfee's vision, personal connection to the Poucher family, and his passion. We want to express our thanks to the Poucher family. I know several of you are here tonight to celebrate, so thank you. Fast forward to just a few weeks ago, and the review hosted the 15th annual Poucher Series event. I think we all agree that the best part of law review was getting to work with Professor Calfee. And there are too many stories and tributes to share tonight. So being the law review types that we are, we made a book. It contains memories, pictures, heartfelt notes, and some really great stories from students you mentored, taught, and treated like family for over 23 years. Thank you, Professor Calfee.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's my honor to be the third of the three Johns speaking on behalf of the Law Review this evening. I've spent 30 years in the Army, and in the Army, leadership, mentorship, and stewardship are very important. And I couldn't have imagined when I showed up at UF Law School over 20 years ago that one of the finest examples of leadership, mentorship, and stewardship that I would experience in my career would come from Professor Dennis Calfee. I came to UF as a 25-year-old, inexperienced Army lieutenant with my wife, Yali, and our little baby, Estelle. In fact, if you looked on the editorial board, the little baby on my knee, that's Estelle. I returned to UF last night as a 52-year-old colonel, experienced by some measures, having momentarily left Yali and now 6 children up at West Point. The little baby just passed in the New York bar exam. She just found out last week. She used to sleep on the floor of the law review. You probably remember Professor Calfee. Whether it was inviting us into their home on brief stops in Gainesville, or remembering to send a gift when another child was born in some far-off place where we were stationed. I still remember receiving the gift in Korea for Marie. Or buying us lunch a couple months ago after we hadn't talked for a while, and the warmth that was still there after all those years. We've been blessed to know Professor Calfee and Peggy. And, it's a very busy time up at West Point right now, with grading papers and dealing with the aftermath of the shutdown and whatnot. But when I told Yali that you were retiring, without any hesitation at all, she said, you have to go. You have to go and be part of that. I've seen the power of stewardship, mentorship, and leadership to transform individuals and organizations over time, and I've seen how harmful their absence can be. Stewardship requires one to believe, and many people have spoken more eloquently about than I could here today, Professor Calfee, to truly believe in the importance of what they are building something that is both worthwhile and meant to outlast one's brief tenure, and all our tenures are ultimately very brief. I think back on your stewardship at a law review, your care and your attention for every detail without ever being overbearing. Standing with you at the far end of the law review hallway, the basketball hoop everyone talked about, one, a young kid, 25 years old, the other, an experienced professor who always had time for us, with your boxes of brass letters and your tape measure, and I remember the scene very clearly, sizing plaques so that the law review would never be completely reliant on ephemeral budgets. The senior editor's donations may not have been much, but you insisted because you knew in the long run that they were important. You always seemed to know and to think for years and years ahead, and you were always there for us. Leadership brings out the best in the team, and it always has an orientation. Leadership always has a goal. I remember your determination that became our determination when we had to catch up with our publication schedule, and your pride that became the pride of the editorial boards, the ones before us, after us, our board, Vivian and Lisa, when we finally caught up in the spring of 2001. You did not berate us. You did not make us stress out. You led with an adamantine will and a gentle touch that inspired. You commented, seemingly whimsically at the time, every time you'd walk by the editorial board in the hallway about where each stage of the issues was at and the ones that were behind. But now I realize the deliberateness of your comments on those numbers and dates on the whiteboard in that long hallway. You knew you were dealing with busy law students, but you knew they had more to give, and you knew how to inspire us to give more. Stewardship builds institutions. Leadership takes those institutions to success, but mentorship builds the people over years and decades that so many people have spoke about here tonight that makes those institutions successful. Good mentors remember when they were young, and they understand where the people they're mentoring are at. They're not at the same place. They don't have the years of experience. Good mentors know when now is not the time to say something, and when something must be said at exactly this time, as uncomfortable as it might be. I can remember very specific instances of things I mishandled with authors and faculty. I can picture myself standing out on the porch of Diamond Village graduate housing with the phone in my hand, my child in the apartment, and the long 1990s phone cord stretched to the wall, pacing back and forth as you walked me through how we were going to extricate myself from some trouble I had gotten myself into. Now, it's no longer a 25-year-old who's impressed with your judgment and counsel. It's an experienced 52-year-old whose professional commitment over a career has required me to judge leadership and mentorship. And I can go back and think of your leadership and mentorship, and I cannot think of any better. The real test of the impact of a man has on this world is not entirely what great people might say about them. There's a video, and may show later, from the president of Taiwan thanking you for your contributions to the tax program. That type of thing is very impressive. But what I think says even more is when those who were touched by that person, by that instructor at the very beginning of their adult lives, can look back with the full benefit of experience and knowledge and realize they were well mentored. I dare say, Professor Calfee, that our beloved republic would do well to have more men like you stewarding and leading and mentoring. But rather than lament that there are perhaps too few, we may all here celebrate tonight that we have all been touched by such a steward, leader, and mentor, and strive to emulate your example, and maybe one day there will be more. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Trace Jackson. I was the editor-in-chief in 2016, so I was the last EIC to have the privilege of serving under Professor Calfee, and I'm here to deliver the first half of the Law Review's closing remarks. That's right, it would not be a Law Review event if we didn't have a footnote or two here. And I am but a footnote to our fantastic last presenter. You know, when I think back on my time with Professor Calfee, we've talked a lot tonight about his intellect and his influence, which are undeniable. But what I remember most is some of the other stories we've heard tonight about just how good of a friend he is, how good of a friend he was to us. With Professor Calfee, you run into him in the hall, it's never, hey, how's it going, or how's the family? It was, hey, is your dad still running that pharmacy on the corner of 9th and Main Street in Omaha, Nebraska? How's he doing? It's a very specific memory, because Professor Calfee has a very specific way of showing up for people and being present, and inspiring us to do the same in others. I think as I look back on tonight, one of the visuals that will stand out to me is when Judge Luck asked people to raise their hand if Professor Calfee's been there for a life event, or when Dabney asked people to raise their hand to show the degree of influence he's had in their lives. But maybe the more poignant thing is the hands we didn't see. The hands of people whose lives have been influenced by you who've never met you. The parent who's able to put food on their table, not because you got the parent a job, but because you got someone else a job, and that person passed the kindness forward. Or the child who is alive today because you introduced their parents. Or the person on the street, the stranger, whose day is made just a little bit better because they interacted with one of us who learned how to treat people because of you. So thank you so much, Professor Calfee. I would also be remiss, it would be very un-Calfee-like of me not to, on behalf of the Law Review, thank the people who's made tonight possible. So thank you to the University of Florida for letting us come together. Thank you to the Levin College of Law, to Dean McAllister, to Dean Mandranak, who I don't know how he herded all the cats he had to herd to make this thing possible, but it's been very impressive. And most of all, thank you. They say that society grows great when men plant trees under whose shade they will never sit. And for Professor Calfee, for half a century and around the world, he's been planting forests. So thank you. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our final speaker of the evening, the magnificent Stephanie Miller.
Good evening. Thank you, Trace. My name is Stephanie Miller, and I'm honored to serve as the current editor-in-chief of the Florida Law Review. And thank you. And Trace's remarks are actually especially apt because Professor Calfee taught my father over 30 years ago here at UF Law. And so I am a perfect example of an indirect impact from Professor Calfee and his impact on my father's life. And Professor Calfee was actually the very first UF Law professor that I met when I was very nervous at Admitted Students Day before my 1L year. My dad and I were touring the school, and Professor Calfee came up and gave us both a great big hug as if he'd known us for years, even though he had never met me before. And ever since that day, he has truly served as a mentor to me. And when I was elected as EIC this past year, Professor Calfee was one of the very first people that I called because I was very excited to hear how proud he was of me. And I am truly just so grateful for all of his time that he has spent over this past year guiding me, answering my many, many questions, my phone calls in morning and at night, with his just calm reassurance and his feisty commitment to always doing what was right. And so tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of announcing that we will be dedicating the January 2026 issue of the Florida Law Review to Professor Dennis Calfee. As you've heard from so many before me, the Law Review would not be what it is today without Professor Calfee, and I would not be where I am today without Professor Calfee. And I am very excited that many people here today have contributed to the dedication, as well as many, many others, and reading the stories that they have written about Professor Calfee from not only here, not only alums from people from the International Tax Program in Taiwan, such as Shunte Wu, who wrote about the incredible impact you had on him and how 5 days with you changed the trajectory of his life. That's just one example of the incredible impacts a man like Professor Calfee has had. And so, Professor Calfee, from the past and the present and the future of the Florida Law Review, thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to welcome Dean McAllister and Mr. Carpenter back up on the stage, please.
Thank you. I just want to thank Dean McAllister and Dean Joe Mandanek for the tremendous job that they've done for us to plan this event. It's incredible. Okay. Now I'm truly honored to have the opportunity to do the Eminent Scholar Chair presentation to my professor, my mentor, and one of my best friends in life, Dennis Calfee. We are all so lucky to have him to be a part of our lives. An Eminent Scholar Chair designation was established by U of F to recognize faculty members of unusual merit and service to the university. Simply stated, it's one of the highest honors a university faculty member can receive, and it will carry their name in perpetuity. We've all heard tonight why Dennis fits the category and deserves to be recognized as an eminent scholar. He's an amazing professor who for 50 years has taught, mentored, and counseled students in the graduate tax program, and is loved, respected, and admired by everyone. Students, law review, research assistants, other professors, Ponce boys and Tim Tebow. I put that in. Administrative personnel, the secretaries, everyone, and their families. Dennis would tell you it's a tie ball game and wants everyone out there to know he loves them just as much as you love him. It is now time for this humble legend and tax icon with a great sense of humor to be recognized as an eminent scholar in federal taxation. Prior recipients of the Eminent Scholar Chairs in federal taxation at the University of Florida College, Levin College of Law were Richard Stevens, James Freeland, and Hugh Culverhouse Sr., tax legends and icons in the tax world. Before we do the presentation, I want to tell you a little about the history of the fundraising effort to create the chair. We started creating this chair in 2005. 1.5 million of donor contributions had to be raised. The goal was to raise $882,000, and the state of Florida would match, and we'd wind up with $1.5 million of funds required to create the Dennis A. Calfee Eminent Scholar Chair to complement the 3 other Eminent Scholar Chairs in federal taxation. In addition, I have heard from a reliable source, Dennis Calfee, that the 4 Eminent Scholar Chairs will be joined by Stephen A. Lynn when the Stephen A. Lynn Eminent Scholar Chair in Federal Taxation is announced in February of 2027. These 5 eminent scholars will help the graduate tax program sustain its high level of teaching and retain its ranking as the #1 graduate program at the University of Florida and the #2 graduate tax program in the country. Back to the fundraising effort. The funds to match were never materialized, and the entire $1.5 million was required to be raised. Donors over the years and through October 2025 had contributed $1,350,000, and $150,000 had to be raised to complete the chair. That is when I decided that the funding of the Calfee chair should be completed prior to this November 14th celebration of 50 years of service event. I am proud to say that through the generosity of the donors in this room, I can announce that the final $150,000 of contributions for the Dennis A. Calfee Eminent Scholar Chair in federal taxation has been completed. I repeat, the funding of the chair has been completed. We have a little present for Dennis to symbolize this momentous occasion for you receiving an Eminent Scholar Chair. And here it is, a rocking chair. And I'm going to try, guys. I don't want to take this off. I'm going to talk loud. Take this off. How do I do that? Dennis M. Calfee, scholar, professor, advisor, mentor from 1975 to 2025. Wow, 50 years. Celebrating more than 50 years of service and leadership to the University of Florida, the Levin College of Law, graduate tax program, and the legal profession. I worked hard on this, but I forgot something. Oh my gosh. There is one other person that deserves at least as much praise and recognition as Dennis. This humble lady will never accept or acknowledge it, and that is Peggy Calfee. Peggy, 1 second. Peggy, thank you for supporting everything Dennis has done for students and sharing him for all these years with us and the law school community. Generations of students have come to recognize and appreciate everything you've done. So everyone, please stand up and join me in thanking Peggy for all she has done for all of us and for taking such good care of Dennis for all of these years.
was wonderful, Richie. I think, we're grateful to you for the key role that you've played in realizing a very fine, very fitting tribute to Professor Calfee. It's just the latest in what has been another aspect of Professor Calfee's tremendous impact on his career, and has already been mentioned tonight, but his commitment to philanthropy. He's spearheaded multiple fundraising efforts, including other eminent scholar chairs, the Dunwoody and Poucher Lecture Series, the Law Center Association. All of these are enduring resources that follow directly from Professor Calfee's leadership. Together, these endowments total more than $6 million in financial support for the law school, which is an incredible total. Tonight, I'm also very pleased to announce another chapter in this legacy. An anonymous donor has stepped forward with a new gift, a $4 million pledge that will be realized, that once realized will benefit the graduate tax program. I'm also happy to say that this pledge will unlock matching funds, thanks to a gift recently made by UF Board of Trustees member Richard Cole. And this incredible donor who has given this generous $4 million gift wishes to remain anonymous, but suffice it to say that they were profoundly influenced by Professor Calfee, and this gift will ensure that the graduate tax program continues to thrive for generations to come. Before we invite Professor Calfee to the stage, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the program that Professor Calfee has been so central to for many years is going through a little transition this year. And I want to acknowledge the incredible work that Dean Charlene Luke has had for many years in leading the program selflessly, tirelessly, and has impacted so many students. And the program's overall strength, the #2 program in the country. And I want to acknowledge that Professor Lee Ford Tritt will become the program's new Associate Dean for Graduate Tax Programs beginning in January. So I'm grateful to Dean Luke. And to the soon-to-be Dean Tritt for stepping into this role and carrying on the legacy of so many wonderful directors and deans of this program. So thank you. At this time, we'd like to welcome Professor Calfee to the stage.
No rail and an old man, you gotta watch that. Whoa, so much. When I thought about having the opportunity to speak tonight, I thought first, well, maybe I ought to get some AI. I thought about calling my friend Carlos over there in New Orleans and seeing if his bride could help me out, but then I decided that probably wouldn't be a good idea. I'm not very good with I'm not even on social media anywhere. And then I thought, well, hell, maybe I ought to talk about some tax thing. We could talk about how to allocate the GST exemption, and the fact that it's not portable, and help people out that way. Or we might talk about income tax consequences if somebody has a Q-Dot trust and the remainderman gets sell their interest to the life tenant surviving spouse. But we won't do that. There's a mixed audience, so I thought that would be too good. But in any event, I might start out with Lil Jahalja. know, I always thought I ought to give extra credit if people could spell that on the final exam. But in any event, I didn't do that. This has really been overwhelming. And I thank you all for coming and joining me and my family as we celebrate my 50 years at the College of Law. And of course, my family's down here in front. My wife Peggy was sitting up here, and you can stand up. And then my son Michael's next, and son Ryan, and my son-in-law Michael Tallarico, and my daughter on the end down there, Christina. And of course, many of the students that are here were there when they were growing up. Sometimes when they were born, sometimes before. They were here before they were born. But in any event, it's really been so nice to have so many students integrated in with my family. I certainly owe an enormous debt of gratitude to all the event individuals, alums, faculty, staff, and administration that have been behind the scenes who facilitated this absolutely wonderful celebration and opportunity for us all to reconnect. I know that everyone in this room, without a doubt, has benefited either directly or indirectly from being connected to the College of Law. The impact of the College of Law is immense, and it simply cannot be measured. And I hope that this type of gathering, where we gather to celebrate when others who have devoted their entire career to the law college retire, that we would do it again and bring everyone back. As for me right now, I'm humbled, and I'm sort of overwhelmed, grateful, nostalgic, and blessed. I've really been a lucky guy. And I asked myself, where have all the years gone? All 50 of them. It seems like only yesterday that I was standing in line to register for classes in the fall of 1974, the inaugural year of the graduate tax program. How did this young man from Connell, Washington, whose population was less than 1,000 most of the years when I was growing up, and my bride, now of 54 years, Peggy, from Colfax, Washington, end up in Gainesville, Florida? The backstory. While I was in law school at Gonzaga, I worked part-time for the Old National Bank Trust Department in Spokane. My workmates and I frequently referenced books authored by Stevens, Freeland, and Lind in the practice. One day, I noticed that, holy guacamole, they were all professors at the University of Florida College of Law. Guacamole wasn't actually the word that I used at the time, but my wife said, you must use guacamole, you can't use that other word. So, as luck would have it, when I decided to enhance my education by getting an LLM in tax, Professor Gary Randall at Gonzaga informed me that Florida was launching an LLM tax program. I applied, and lo and behold, the director himself, Richard B. Stevens, called me and said, we'll admit you and we'd like you to come. Wow, I was sold right there. I said, that's the same guy that's name was on those books. In any event, Peggy and I put our careers on hold and loaded up the car with most all of our belongings in my car and drove cross country to Gainesville, Florida. Now, because of some things that happened on the way, we ended up in San Antonio, Texas, and had to drive from San Antonio, Texas to Gainesville in one city. She wanted to see New Orleans, and I said, okay, we drove through. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody out there. Anyway, so we get to Gainesville, and honest to God, I'll admit it now, I fell asleep driving on the road out here just before I got to Gainesville. I almost didn't make it, but I woke up and I got it. So anyway, so we get to Gainesville, it's like 11 o'clock at night. We have to have some place to stay. So we're driving down 13th Street, and the only place, one place, had a vacancy sign. Flashing. Wait, guess what? It was the Bambi Motel. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Bambi Motel on 13th Street, but it sure as hell wasn't the Ritz. Oh, yeah. Vacancy sign all night was keeping us going. When we came here in 1974, there were no housing. There wasn't housing for students. It was awful. And in point of fact, at that time, after we'd come all that way, thought about going back, just giving up, because we didn't have housing. I swear to God, there was one place we looked at, and it was a trailer, and the next morning it had burnt. And I would have gone home, but Professor Lynn said, no. Calm, Professor Lynn. You'll find housing. Well, as luck would have it, Peggy and I had to register. She was registering at the university to take courses, and I had to do something there too, and we're standing in line. And the person in front of the line said, I'm withdrawing. Do you need a house? I have an apartment and I'd like to sublet it to you. Yay! Housing problem solved. Off to class. In any event, what an eye-opener taking tax classes at Florida turned out to be. I felt like a deer in the headlights of a Mack truck. 5 tax courses in 1 quarter to master, but they're all taught by world-class professors. I thought to myself, what have I got myself into? And I just kept telling myself, just try to learn something. Just try to learn something, and then think about how you can apply what you learn when you go back and practice tax. Now, I'm going to digress for a minute, and you'll know why in a minute. So, as luck would have it, after starting classes, I went across the street from the law school to the store which advertised milk at a really good price. So I go over there, I'm going to buy milk. Now, we had come from the state of Washington, note I put an R in there, and I had a checking account on the bank in Connell. We couldn't even get credit at Moss Brothers. Okay, I had a lot of difficulty cashing a check, but I had some traveler's checks, so I'm using those traveler's checks. But in any event, I went to buy some milk across the street, and I was out of traveler's checks. So all I had was this check written on a Connell bank. And I said to the man behind the counter, I said, would you cash a check for me? And he said, how much do you want? And I said, $25. He whipped out $25 and handed me the $25. I hadn't even written the check yet. I wrote the check out, I gave it to him, he put it in the till, didn't say anything. Didn't ask me for ID, nothing. And years later, I asked him, I said, hey, when I started cashing those checks here, I said, you didn't even ask me for ID. And he told me, if I'd asked you for ID, once I decided I was going to cash your check, that would destroy all the goodwill I was creating by cashing your check. If you're going to do something for somebody, don't ask too many questions, just do it. But in any event, that was one of the first lessons that I learned from Wilbert Langston. And you saw the picture of Steve and I and Wilbert there. And Wilbert became my banker, my milkman, and my friend for life. Now, I know that there's a bunch of people in here that frequented Wilbert, so that's why I got to tell this story. My wife said, "You can't tell that story. You have to hurry up." Okay. She did. So, had to prevail with me. So, 3/4, we were on the quarter system then, graduate tax program flew by. It was over, blink of an eye. And my classmates and I, in battling the Internal Revenue Code, bonded and formed friendships that last today. And I know there are a couple of people here tonight that were in that first class. But yeah, because we worked pretty hard in that Internal Revenue Code, and especially ERISA in 1974. Now, part of the overall plan for the graduate tax program, as envisioned by Professor Stevens, Lind, and Freeland, was to offer one graduate the opportunity to teach. And before the program ended, as luck would have it, the tax faculty asked me if I would be interested in teaching. And I just spent a year experiencing the profound effect that superb teachers can have on one's life, and I wanted to learn how to emulate their methods. So I said yes. And just think about this. Just imagine what it would be like to start a job and be mentored by Professor Fenn, Freeland, Lind, Locken, Miller, and Stevens. Wow! It was incredible. And it certainly was an experience beyond what anyone can even imagine. And as I say, the good Lord certainly smiled on me on that one. And over the last 50 years, day after day, I've studied tax law and learned life's lessons with and from students and colleagues at the College of Law and across the university. It seems like only yesterday, truly, that I was teaching my first class. The memory is still fresh in my mind after 50 years. And I'm sure that I've shared the story of my first class with many of you. But in my opinion, it's a story worth repeating. It's a classic. When I was offered that opportunity to teach, I had the summer to prepare for class. And of course, that was the summer that Peggy and I had, Ryan? Yeah. Yes? So anyway, I'm trying to prepare for class. I'm religiously working on it. And when it came time for the class, I'd prepared notes for the whole quarter, and I was ready to go. Well, in the law school, before they remodeled it, they used to have alpine rooms. And this was steep from the top to the bottom. They used to be able to open up the top, and they can make a big auditorium from the low level all the way up. So I started down the stairway with my notes, all excited, exuberant. And I got near the bottom, and I missed the last step. And I went, poof. I almost fell down, but I bounced against the wall, came back up, and the adrenaline was just shooting out my fingers. And I made it to the podium and put my things down. And I looked up at the class, and I couldn't talk. I had fluff mouth so bad that I couldn't breathe. It was like one time when I was a freshman in high school, they put me in the A squad game, and they ran up a couple times down the field. The coach had to take me out because I couldn't breathe. But anyway, I couldn't breathe. So finally, I got my composure, and I started in, and over the next 55 minutes, I chewed up every note that I had made for the whole semester, recorded. And I can remember going home and telling Peggy, I can't teach because there's not going to be enough hours in a day to prepare. And as it turned out, the good news is that I spent the rest of the quarter reviewing the things that I told them in the first 55 minutes. And again, as luck would have it, at the end of that first year, Dean Julin asked me if I would like to teach another year. And one thing led to another, and here we are 50 years later. Not many people are as fortunate as I am, and that I've had a dream job for 50 years. Every day I get up, and every day that I go to the law school, I'm excited and I look forward to the opportunity to interacting with others. What a treat that is. Over the years, I've been afforded the opportunity to teach multiple generations. And there are multiple generations in this room where I taught the father, the mother, and then I also taught the children. Mason, I'm working on the grandchild. Okay. But in any event, when I get into class, normally what I do is I ask the student to state their name, maybe state where they're from, because I'm trying to create a sense of community in the class so that they'll get to know one another. And of course, if you just give somebody their name, that doesn't last very long. But if they know you were from Arkansas or something like that, they'll remember that. So in any event, I'm in that business, and I asked the kid down the road to state his name, and he said something and said, "Oh, I think I recognize that last name." And I said, "Did you have a brother who went to law school here?" It was a class of 100 students, and this kid is right in the back, in the middle. And the class got very silent. And this student said, with a slow voice and a pleasant southern drawl, "No, sir, that wasn't my brother. That was my daddy." Everyone in the class laughed. But I think that was the first time that I was teaching the next generation and realized it. And when you teach classes of students, they're always the same age. You look out there and, hey, I'm not getting to be an old man. Everybody else is the same age all the time. But that young man made me realize that I wasn't a young man anymore. So I am also so grateful for the countless opportunities that I've had at the college and the university. And teaching tax courses has been my life. I love teaching tax. I love working with the Internal Revenue Code, out loud and with feeling. A dream come true, so to speak. Pinch me. But also, as luck would have it, when I finished my term as Associate Dean, years, I had the opportunity to become the faculty advisor to the Florida Law Review for more than 2 decades and watch the empowered members timely produce high-quality journal after journal and 2 annual lecture series, The Poucher and the Dunwoody. It's been a real treat for me to work on the treatise with both first Dick and Steve, and then with countless research assistants. And of course, the Ellen Bellett-Gelberg Tax Policy Lecture Series has been a delight to arrange. And collaborating with the tax faculty and tax practitioners in this state in the design and implementation of the practical and innovative Florida Tax Institute is really an ongoing vision realized. And I really have had some great opportunities when I've served on boards, whether it's the University Athletic Association board or the UAA board, and being on that professional sports counseling panel, certification and recertification of the university's athletic programs, and serving on the CLE committee of the Florida Bar. It's just been great. And of course, you saw in the pictures that I was blessed with the opportunity to take my family to teach in China, the Netherlands, Taiwan, and France. And of course, some of those times I went well beyond my comfort zone, but certainly we always had a great reward as a family. And I remember that when we went to Beijing to teach, Christina was like 6 months old. People told me, you take her there and she's going to die. And I thought, oh no, there's millions of people there. That isn't going to happen. But in any event, yeah. Many times over the years, and it came up earlier, that I always ask my class at the end to remember an experience that they shared with a parent or a relative or a friend. We all have some event. One I always remember is, growing up in a small town, my dad took me to a Harlem Globetrotters basketball game. And I swear to God, for 2 months, I sang Sweet Georgia Brown and whistled it. But in any event. And then what I do is I remind the class that when you get to the end of your life, it's not going to matter how much money you made, and it isn't going to matter how many cases you won, but it's those experiences which you take the time to share with your family and friends that create memories. Will certainly outlive you. And I thank each and every one of you for the experiences that you took the time to share with me. And the memories that you have made for me, especially this one. Like in the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Thank you all.
How can you follow that? That's not fair. It has been an absolute privilege helping to recognize Professor Calfee today. Judge Mizell and I really just want to extend, there's lots of thank yous to go around, but two in particular, to the Dean. This would simply not have happened without the Dean. The Dean greenlit this event. This doesn't happen without her saying, we're going to dedicate time and resources of the university and the law school, which are limited, to be able to do something like this. And both Judge Mizell and I are deeply grateful to the Dean for doing that. And to Joe Mandradak, while the dean greenlits it, it doesn't happen without somebody on the ground doing the work and putting this together. I can tell you, I think I was on at least 15 Zoom calls regarding this, and that was only a small slice of the work that goes on to putting this in. And so, Joe, thank you for all of your efforts in helping tonight. The final thank you, and I know others have mentioned this, is to each and every one of you in this room. It's not lost on us that everybody here has family, has work, has things going on in their lives. And every one of you took the time to be here to honor someone that we all deeply admire. And we thank all of you for being here today. Thank you. But the fun is not over. The bar is still open. The food is still here. We will be here to 10 o'clock. I'm not leaving. I'm going for a drink right after this. Please join us for more socializing afterwards.
And just a couple of reminders, there is a camera set up if you'd like to make a video that would be memorialized for Professor Calfee and Mrs. Calfee. There's also annual photos for the law review and the tax programs that can be viewed and signed for Professor Calfee to bring home as keepsakes. And I think, Professor Calfee, if I could just say, you inspire all of us and have set a model that we all hope to emulate in the various roles wherever we're placed and planted. May we all be as faithful as you were for 50 years.
Please remember to join us. Sorry, one last thing. Please remember to join us for brunch tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll be there, but despite that, please still come. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Professor Calfee, I join your friends and former students in Taiwan and around the world in congratulating you on an outstanding career. In Taiwan, your classes not only built institutional expertise in international tax law, but also left many people with cherished memories. With your long and esteemed career, a restful and enjoyable retirement is well deserved. Congratulations again.